Hi, everyone. Hey, glad to see you on. Hello. Got people from Michigan, New York, Chicago, Georgia, Atlanta. Welcome, welcome. This morning. I want to talk about two things to get started. The first is I want to mention a little bit about preparedness. Last month was National Preparedness Month. Um, I didn't talk about preparedness in the National Preparedness Month. I do believe preparedness is really an important thing to do, and I have reason to be, to believe that we may need some preparedness here in the future. I think there are some interesting events about to take place in our country, and it could cause a little bit of disruption here and there for a while. And so I think having some basic preparedness is a good idea. And I got into herbal medicine originally from the standpoint of emergency preparedness. I became very interested in outdoor survival. And one of the things about herbal medicine is I realized how in the absence of pharmaceutical drugs, or if the power outage and everything, there's a lot of things that medical doctors are unable to do. And I became interested in what the natural world had to offer from that standpoint of preparedness. So I don't want to go into today the reasons why I think we're going to have some issues in the near future, but I'll probably start up another webinar series to deal with more of the messages in the nature of spiritual things, what's going on in the world, but I want to keep this more health related. I have, in my own life, I have a really nice first aid kit that I keep in my house with, stuff. Since I have my stepkids and they seem to always be hurting themselves, they're always digging, they're using up the Band-Aids. You have to check it periodically because the bandages are always disappearing. But I keep a good amount of first aid supplies, bandages, safety pins, candles, flashlights, and some herbal remedies to have at home, because even in the absence of emergency preparedness, you never know when someone might be sick in the middle of the night, or have a cold, and you can't just run out and necessarily get what you want, especially if you're interested in natural remedies. So I always try to keep things like capsicum lobelia, something to stimulate the immune system, like echinacea, something for stress, something maybe for dealing with a cough or cold. I keep the silver, both liquid silver and the silver gel in my first aid kit. I have stuff to massage on topically for pain. And then I also have emergency kits in my cars. Actually, I've got to have a new one because now there's 3 cars in the family, and I've got to make one for the third car. But it's a little small backpack, and inside that backpack I have like a tarp and a couple of things like that are very helpful, like a blanket, a tarp, a rain poncho, a little bit of emergency food and water, some first aid supplies, a knife, a multi-tool, and a little bit of emergency cash. And the idea I'm thinking there is, if you ever had you're going someplace, you had a breakdown or something happened and you needed to be able to stay somewhere for the night or whatever, you'd have at least some emergency supplies to help you. I also like to keep some food storage. I don't think food is the most critical thing you need in emergency preparedness. Water, having some water stored is much more critical than having food. You can last a lot longer without food than you can with water. And I think also having things like some emergency blankets or some things to keep yourself warm, and these types of things are very, very important. In the event of, for example, civil unrest, where things start to, we have a little bit of a period of some turmoil in the country, which sure looks like we could get that. Especially in major metropolitan areas, there might be a problem with disruption of the water, disruption of power. And in any emergency situation, whether you're dealing with hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, or whatever, grocery stores can shut down, or supplies can be, basically taken off the shelves, and there's nothing at the grocery store to be had within less than 24 hours. So having you don't have to have like a year's supply of food, but I think to have like a 2-week supply of emergency food in your home is a smart thing, along with some water and some other things, so that you can weather difficulty. And I personally store supplies. I have a first aid kit full of herbal remedies, as well as bandages and splints and things like that, that if I needed to go and be of help in an emergency somewhere, I would be able to grab my pack and so forth, and be able to go out and help people. I have put out some webinars in the past on emergency preparedness that you can pick up on my YouTube channel. And like I said, we had just even natural disasters. Someone mentioned, what happened in Puerto Rico last year was really horrible. There were problems, of course, with some of the recent hurricanes. There could be, there could be earthquakes. There could be a lot of things that could disrupt services and everything. And being prepared to be able to take care of yourself for a couple of weeks is a good idea. I know even, I think it was Hurricane Sandy that hit the East Coast. Some people were without power for 2 weeks. So you have no refrigerator. It's hard to get gasoline in so people could drive their cars. Oh, I store water in, I bought some special plastic containers. They hold 5 gallons that I specifically bought for storing water. And I have, about 8 of them. So I have about 40 gallons of water. And what I did is I put a couple of tablespoons of the silver into the water to help purify it, sealed it up. It should be good for several years. Periodically, it's probably a good idea that I should take it and clean it out and put in some fresh water and put some more silver in it. After it being stored for so long of time, you might need, want to try to boil it or add some more silver to make sure that it's okay. But water will keep pretty good with silver in it. One of the things I learned is that, like, pioneers crossing the plains would often put a couple of silver coins in the bottom of the water barrel, which actually would keep the water from going bad, because the silver ions will kill the bacteria and so forth. And the silver shield, or the equivalent of that, Nature Sunshine's product is called Silver Shield. A couple of tablespoons is all it takes to preserve a 5-gallon container of water. But I'd have at least 1 good sized container of water, maybe 2. You also, in an emergency, can, if you know that the emergency is coming, you can fill your bathtub and use that as an emergency source of water and so forth. Someone just gave big message, says they're very big on emergency preparedness. Husband works in ER medicine in Chicago this past week with highly public trial on police officer that shot teen 16 times. Chicago went crazy. Husband received warning of safety on event. Increased police sent home early at large downtown loop of Chicago. So glad we were big on preparing. This event on Friday sent me straight for my distress remedy and anxious list. That's another thing. You should have something for stress. Because in any kind of natural situation, you're going to need rescue remedy or distress remedy and some nervines that help to calm you down. And so it's very, very important to think ahead and be prepared to take care of yourself. You can't always depend on the fact, and this has happened all over the country many times. The statistically, okay, at least 20% of us will experience a major natural disaster in our lifetime, statistically. So that is a good reason to be prepared. And what you just talked about, right now there's a great deal of tension in the country. Obviously, a great political division and so forth. And because things are so touchy this way, it'd be very easy for certain things to happen that would trigger major civil unrest, especially in large metropolitan areas. And having some ability to hunker down and have a little bit of food and water to take care of yourself for a little while is a good idea. I wouldn't like publicly announce to the world that you have that, and I would be careful in an emergency to kind of stay home and be quiet about it. But you ideally you want food that doesn't have to be cooked, because if the power's out or the gas mains are down and you don't have the ability to cook, you want to be able to have stuff that you can eat fairly instantly. And so it's important to think about this and be prepared to take care of yourself. And they mentioned the distress remedy you can spray on yourself and help to calm other people down. Yeah, it's a great remedy. Actually, I formulated the current distress remedy for Nature Sunshine with the help of Patricia Kaminsky and Richard Katz at Flower Essence Services. And I call it Rescue Remedy +2, because it basically has the same 5 flower essences that are in Rescue Remedy plus 2 additional ones that I think actually make it even better for shock and trauma than Rescue Remedy is. And it's very helpful in an emergency situation to have something like that you can give to people to help calm them down, center it. Because one thing that Rescue Remedy does is when people get stressed, they go into kind of a reptilian brain mode where their kind of animalistic instincts take over and they can't think very rationally. And so if you take Rescue Remedy, what it seems to do is it brings you back to be more centered, more present, more capable of thinking rationally, which is really important in an emergency, so that you can figure out what to need to do. Most of us, if we aren't losing it because of stress and going, crazy and bonkers and running into a complete fight, flight, or freeze mode, you can just think your way through an emergency and come up with good things to do. So I think that's really an important part of that. And it's definitely a part of my first aid supplies, is to have the distress remedy on hand, help people with the emotional issues. In fact, I remember reading one of I went to a survival course with Sam Kaufman, and he took and went down and had a group helping people as an herbal clinic in the hurricane aftermath of the hurricanes down in Texas. And they had people at the Red Cross station coming over to them, asking them if they had anything for stress. So I think that's a really important thing to do. Oh yeah, and distress remedy is actually very good for people who experience panic attacks. And I also recommend for people who experience panic attacks, lobelia and or kava, which are 2 remedies I always keep on hand. Lobelia being a very strong antispasmodic and relaxing nervine. And I've seen someone in the middle of a panic attack that I've helped pull them out by small repeated doses of lobelia. And I've done the same thing with small repeated doses of liquid kava. Yeah, someone says, in case of water in a small suitcase on a wheel, in case we have to flee the house, so the water is not visible, as distressed people would hurt you for taking. Yeah, well, that's one thing you got to be careful of, especially. One of the things that I would recommend as far as having a little bit of emergency food or water is that you might want to keep it in a small backpack or a suitcase, that if you have to evacuate, you can take it with you. Because again, even if you're evacuating something, and you go to a shelter or whatever, there may be a lot of shortage of that. Of course, I would be willing to share that with other people in distress, but maybe other people wouldn't. But my mom, I grew up in a family where we were taught to be prepared and to store food and so forth. And my mom, because there were neighbors who didn't believe in food storage, she stored food with the idea that she'd feed them in an emergency. So that's kind of how I think too. So I didn't want to dwell on that too long, but I did want to mention that I think right now is a good time to be prepared, because we are in a time that I don't think it's going to turn out bad for the country, but I think we're going to go through some real hiccups in terms of things getting readjusted. And so it's a good idea to be ready. And again, I especially am urging that for people who live in urban areas, because that's where we're most likely to experience that kind of turmoil in an emergency. Of course, you have to evaluate where you live, as to what the potentials are for natural disasters in your area, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, etc., and plan accordingly for what you might need there. Someone said, someone in a group last week asked about chest pains. I shared what I think I learned from you about the liquid lobelia and capsicum under the tongue. It helped. Yeah, that does help. I personally would not want to be without the capsicum and lobelia as part of my first aid kit. And I also think you should think in terms of stuff for infection, sanitation, and stress as the big ones, okay? Because those are the major things that you ought to be thinking about. Food is actually, having a little bit of food, like a 2-week supply of food that's ready to eat is a good idea. But much more critical things are something to keep you warm, something to help you with the weather, some kind of emergency lighting, water, and some of those things, because those things are even more critical than food in terms of the survival situation. A lot of people think first of food, but you need to think first in terms of some of these other even more fundamental necessities, because those are things that are the real things. Sanitation is a big one. Water is a big one, and being able to keep warm are major ones. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about this book, Healing is Voltage. I read this book a while ago and I thought it was really nice, but I saw on Dr. Jerry Tennant, I saw a talk that he gave at the Electric Universe conference, and it kind of interested me again to go back and look at this, because one of the things he talks about is Tesla's resonating circuits, which is illustrated right here. Okay, it's a coil with a capacitor on it, and they're used in electronics to basically transmit energy. So what he maintains, and I think this is a very interesting idea, is that the myelin sheath of the surrounding the muscles basically create a capacitor system. And so what you have, let's see, where's the picture of it, that basically runs, so you have capacitor systems that run through the body, and these follow what we have in Chinese medicine as the acupuncture meridians. In other words, what he's saying is that these Tesla coils, basically, that are created by the muscles, form up in chains that go up the body and then back down again, and up the body and back down again through different organ systems, providing electrical energy for those organs. And he maintains that one of the reasons why we get sick is because these electrical circuits running through the body wind up not having enough voltage or power running through them to run the body properly. And he also suggests that that pH is related to this, and I understand that very, very well, because what you have, and what most people don't understand, is that pH relates to electrons. Actually, the pH really refers to the potential of hydrogen. Hydrogen, of course, is the simplest of the elements, with one proton and one electron. So if you have a charge, okay, hydrogen, if you take away the electron, you have a free proton, one proton without an electron, all right? If you have more electrons in the solution, then you have excess electrons that are beyond what the protons can soak up, and you have, therefore, a potential for electrical energy, for the flow of electrons. And so when you have an acid pH, you have more protons without electrons. And when you have an alkaline pH, you have more electrons than you have protons. So when you have a alkaline pH, you actually have an electrical potential. So if you take a battery, right, inside of a battery, you have an acid solution and an alkaline solution separated by a semiconductor. And the semiconductor only allows electrons to flow one way. They can't flow back and forth. They can only flow in one direction. That's what the semiconductor does. So when you hook up the battery, okay, the wire to both ends of the battery, the electricity can start to flow, and it flows from the alkaline side to the acid side. Follow? Because the alkaline side donates electrons, the acid side soaks up the electrons. So this is very similar to the idea of oxidants and antioxidants. Okay, antioxidants donate electrons, oxidants steal electrons. So we know that, one of the big areas of research is that, oxidative damage, where you're getting a lack of electrons, and you get more compounds stealing electrons than you get compounds donating electrons. Someone said they bought his machine and are having amazing results with it. I was wondering if anybody had tried to use that. I haven't got his machine. I've been very seriously thinking about seeing if I could get one. I don't know if I could afford it or not, but because I'm very fascinated with this. I go to a chiropractor who uses a laser, and he sets the laser to different frequencies, and when there's like pain or inflammation in my body, he not only is adjusting me and doing things, but he's also running the laser over me, basically putting energy into the tissues. So this is the book. I highly recommend reading this book. It's fascinating. It's a little bit deep, okay, because it gets into physics and electronics and some stuff like that. But it's got a lot of good information, and it is called Healing with Voltage by Jerry Tennant, MD. But what he's saying is that basically, when tissue repairs itself, you get a higher alkalinity or a higher pH, where you're getting a lot of electrical activity in order for the tissue to be able to repair itself. So the body runs on, I think it's a negative 25 millivolts. In other words, 25 millivolts of electrical current, which is a pH of 7.4. If I can find the part of that book where it has that table. I should have marked it before I got in here, but basically he has a table showing at different pH levels what the voltage of that is, okay? And so at 7.4, I think that's a negative 0.25 millivolts of electrical potential for electrical current flowing with the electrons being donated. Okay. Now, if you drop down into the acidic cell, you get a reversal of current. In other words, now you've got the current flowing the other way because that is hungry for electrons and wants electrons. It doesn't have enough electrons. So, in other words, I've heard a lot over the years about the importance of pH, of having the body maintained at a certain slightly alkaline pH. The blood has to be right around 7.4, and that's also where the interstitial fluid or lymphatic fluid is supposed to be at about 7.4, which is a very slightly alkaline, which is a very slight electrical current. Now, as your electrical current diminishes, as there's less electrical, so as your pH goes down, there's less electrical energy there to run the cells of your body, and therefore you start to get sick. You start to feel tired, and then you start to feel sick. And then if your polarity flips because your system goes acid, then you get really sick. And once it drops down to the point where you're getting I think it's about a negative, so it's a positive 0.3 millivolts, is where cells turn cancerous. Basically, they lose their energy is so low that they revert to a more primitive metabolism and go cancerous. In other words, disease, and I've often expressed this myself, the most fundamental aspect of illness is a loss of energy. Loss of energy. Life is energy. Life is light and energy. It's not the chemistry. It's not the physical structure. It's the energy that animates and maintains the chemistry and the physical structure. That flow of that constant flow of life energy flowing through the body is what gives us health. And so when we have a high level of wellness, we have a high level of energy, and that high level of energy, we feel good. We can think clearly. We have a lot of positive benefits for that. And when our current starts dropping and we start losing life energy, we basically start becoming depleted. So it is true that we get some of our energy from food. So someone asked about how ionic minerals like mineral Teutonic or whatever help the electrical levels. Well, minerals, participate in the body in the utilization and so forth of energy. So nutritional deficiencies will obviously create problems with energy production. But you have several basic types of energy going in place. You have the energy being generated by the mitochondria in the form of ATP. You have this energy that's maintained as capacitors in the muscles, which is the energy that flows through the meridians of the body. And you also, and so there are several different kinds of electrical current going on in the body. So one way we get electrical energy is by eating foods that have a lot of electrical energy, the foods that are vibrant and alive and still electrical. So the fresher the food, the less processed the food, the more vital energy or electricity that it has to donate to our bodies. The more devitalized, denatured, whatever, the less electrical energy it has. It may still have the nutrients, but it does not have the energy to donate to the body that alive, that a fresh tomato or a fresh, green bean or whatever from the garden has. So that's one way we get electrical energy. But another way we get electrical energy is from the earth. And I mentioned this in a previous webinar, that the earth acts as a gigantic electron donor. But it doesn't do that when we're walking with insulated shoes and we live in, insulated houses and driving insulated cars, and we're never making contact with the earth or living things. So if you've noticed, walking barefoot in the sand or the grass will often make you feel very energized. It's very invigorating. It's actually a naturopathic practice to walk barefoot. Okay, and so and this is because your feet, a lot of these acupuncture meridians turn at your feet and your fingertips. They go, out, come back, but at the feet, the circuits switch, one way to the next way. So you basically absorb electrons through the ground when you are walking barefoot in the sand or the grass, or you're lying on the ground. Your body is actually absorbing electrons directly from the earth, and it helps to revitalize and recharge your body. That's the principle of earthing. That's why when I learned about that, and I got the earthing sheet, which is this sheet that's impregnated with little silver wires that you hook into a ground so that it's hooked to the ground. And when I first slept on it, I really, really noticed a difference. It helps to relieve pain, helps speed healing, and so forth. I think the wave of the future is going to be energy medicine. I think Jerry Tennant is on some of the cutting edge of this, with developing systems of being able to put an electrical device onto certain acupuncture meridian points and put energy into that circuit. And he talked about that in this talk of taking, like he says, the teeth actually are part of the circuit breakers, and so you get a disruption of energy. And by putting this little electrical device where the wisdom teeth were supposed to be, that wisdom tooth circuit is one of the things that helps you cope with stress. So the fact that we are losing our wisdom teeth diminishes our ability to cope with stress. So he'll take that circuit and measure the electrical energy of it, and then put the energy into it, and it will eventually charge the circuit, and people then will experience a renewed thing of health. So anyway, those of you who've been interested in learning things, another way that you get higher voltage is by better oxygenation. I observe that almost all chronically ill people are shallow breathers. They don't get enough oxygen into their body. And one of the things that I've been meaning to do, there's somebody locally here who has a hyperbolic oxygen chamber, and I really want to go get into it. I haven't had time, but I know a friend of mine had sent numerous people to a place in Idaho that had one of these machines, and every single one of them that had cancer that got into the hyperbolic oxygen machine, the cancer would basically disappear. I mean, it was very effective, because one of the things you have going on with cancer cells is a lack of oxygen. Oxygenation at the cellular level helps the mitochondria, of course, produce ATP, which is an electrical energy. So it isn't just food, right? I mean, you eat good food, but you've also got to have the oxygen to be able to convert that into energy. So I think we need to think not just in terms of supplements and so forth, but think in terms of energy. Now, she did say to all of these friends, she says, and she told me this, I thought it was really interesting. She said, I'll send you to this clinic, and if you'll get better with the cancer, but if you don't deal with the underlying emotional reasons why you got cancer, it'll come back. And she had told me that she knew several friends who were cured of the cancer, but then because they wouldn't deal with the emotions behind it, they wound up having a relapse. And I think one of the reasons why I'm so big on emotional healing is because I believe as we lose the ability to flow with the feeling in our body, and we become increasingly hardened in our heart and our emotions and whatever, we're actually diminishing electrical flow through our energy circuits. And so as we learn to have positive thought processes, and as we learn to process through our feelings, that also opens up the acupuncture meridians, because all of those meridians and that energy has been associated with emotions as well as with herbs and nutrients and so forth, because the emotional energy is actually related to the flow of that electrical energy. That you have young kids who are very emotionally vibrant and whatever, have very high energy flowing through their bodies. And as we get older and we become increasingly maybe negative in our thought processes, and we have all kinds of emotions that we're squashing and refusing to acknowledge and so forth, we wind up getting sicker and sicker because we're literally shutting down circuits of energy in the body. So I just, wanted to kind of throw those ideas out there. Some people have made some comments, so I'm gonna read some comments here, and then we'll go some. Someone says, amazing experience after 9/11 attack. All responders in Chicago had to fill out paperwork for government with weight, age, etc. on all first responders' family members so as to receive antidote that the government had piles for what they were expecting. This was not nationally publicized. Always important to be prepared, as we do not know what else we are not being told. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the point. If you know about the movie The Matrix and the metaphor of the red pill and the blue pill, where the hero Neo is given a chance to either remain comfortably in his delusions of what's really going on, or to take the red pill and wake up and see the reality of what's really happening and start fighting against it. He chooses to take the red pill. And so being red pilled is to wake up and realize the whole heck of a lot of what you're being told, what you were taught in school, what mainstream media is telling you is true, what what society is programming you to believe is actually false. It's not just a lack of knowledge, it's deliberately false. It's keeping you in darkness. And what happens when you're kept in darkness is if you're given incorrect information and you accept that incorrect information, you cannot make effective decisions because you do not have the adequate knowledge to make right decisions. Knowledge is an understanding of cause and effect, an understanding of reality. And if you're not given good knowledge, you can't make good decisions because you do not know what works and what doesn't work. Understand? And so I really started seeing this when I'm sitting here getting all these fabulous results with herbs. I'm not having any negative effects. I tried modern medicine for years and years and years, never had gotten well, and had gotten sicker and sicker. And now I started, changing my diet and doing natural things. I started to get well. And then I would see mainstream media and all these different sources telling me herbs were dangerous. You need to be really careful with herbs because you can really hurt yourself with herbs. Trust the doctors, do the pharmaceutical, blah, 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 blah. And I realized, wait a minute, this is not at all what I'm experiencing. These herbal remedies I'm using, I sure you can abuse anything. I mean, if you really want to try hard enough and you don't have any common sense. But the herbal remedies seemed extremely safe. And coupled with diet and just making good lifestyle changes, I was getting fabulous results with this, with myself, with my family, with other people. And here is mainstream media telling me, peppering this with horrible cautions and this herb could be bad for you and blah, 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 all kinds of stuff that I'd never even seen in all my experience. And I started to think, if they're this wrong about this, if they're telling me this, and it's this wrong, what else are they telling me that's wrong? What else are they telling me that's not true? What else are they telling me that's keeping me from having the knowledge and the information? So I used to actually, I love to tell people knowledge is power, and that, my goal has always been, I want to empower people with information that helps them find solutions to their problems, overcome them. If you have accurate knowledge, you can overcome problems. If you have inaccurate knowledge, you can't overcome problems. Okay, let me go back to comments here. My husband went to chiropractic this morning. The chiropractor told my husband that he was stove up. What do you recommend he take? I don't understand what stove up means. My husband's been diagnosed with reflex sympathetic dystrophy. We gave him the sympatholytic herbs for this, and it really helps. He also has a problem calling up words he wants to say. I'd have to do a consult with you on that, because I need a lot more information before I could give you some adequate suggestions on what to do there. Because I need to look at that a little more closely. Okay. Yeah, I believe you could take Rejuvenaid while you're on high blood pressure medication. What you need to do, okay, whenever you take something, like you're taking something naturally to regulate blood sugar and you're on a blood sugar medication, you're taking something naturally for your blood pressure and you're on a blood pressure medication, what I would recommend that you do is frequently monitor your blood sugar or your blood pressure, and as you start to see improvement, if you're getting on the right supplements and you're starting to see improvement, then you're going to need to gradually back off your dose on your high blood pressure medication. My dad was, this is an interesting story. I got my dad on some herbs and stuff like that, and he had some problems with high blood pressure. And when he noticed his high blood pressure was going up, he would take 1/4 of the pill that the doctor gave him. And the rest of the time he was just taking herbs. And when he went to the cardiologist, he says, you are one of the only elderly patients I have where the blood pressure medication is working. And he said, well, I only take this much once in a while, and this time I'm taking herbs. And he says, well, whatever you're doing, it's working. So what you want to do is monitor the situation. I would recommend, if you have high blood pressure, in addition to the Rejuvenaid, I would recommend magnesium, because many people are deficient in magnesium, which is also important for your blood vessels. But I think that it's very possible to get blood pressure down naturally, but you just have to monitor the situation. The herbs are not working in the same way the drugs are, so you're not getting a double action of the herbs versus the drugs. The herbs are working on a whole different approach to the thing than the blood pressure medication. The blood pressure medication is just blocking certain signaling systems that are making the blood pressure go up. You're doing things to actually help the body relax the blood vessels and make the blood pressure come down. So basically, if you do those things concurrently and you just monitor the situation, you will do that. Someone says they use the compass to scan for the flower cysts. That's good. Okay, detoxifying from EMFs. Now, that whole thing that I just brought up about electricity brings up a very, very problematic issue that we have with these little devices like cell phones and computers and everything else like that. We're exposed to a great deal of electromagnetic radiation, and Tesla believed that even though he developed AC current, he later developed a different form of electricity, which he said worked along with the human body, whereas the AC current actually, especially the 60-cycle AC current, is against it. And there's some definite questions about the safety of 5G, which we have it, okay? But it's important to understand that these are all frequencies too, and we may need to reinforce our body against them. There are devices out there. I've checked them with muscle testing, and many of them seem to work, that you can put on your cell phones, you can put on your computers, that you can wear on your body, that help to negate some of these harmful electromagnetic frequencies so that they're not interfering with the electromagnetic function of your own body. I do not like talking on my cell phone like this. I avoid it. as much as I possibly can. I don't even like carrying my cell phone with me. I sometimes wish I could throw my cell phone away and never see it again. But we live in an age where, unfortunately, these tools have become part of the way we have to do business and the way we function. But if I'm going to be talking on my cell phone for a long time, I use a headset. I don't use a Bluetooth headset. I use a wired headset. You notice this is not a Bluetooth headset. This is a wired headset because it produces less electromagnetic stuff going on, I think. I've muscle tested and played with some of these things. Fortunately, the new LED screens don't put out the same kind of electrical current as the old TV screens do, so that they're not as harmful in that way. But there's issues with this, which I would get into, but I would highly recommend greatly limiting the amount of time you spend on cell phones and computers where possible. I mean, I work at a computer, so it's whatever, but consider getting some of these little devices that you can either wear or put in your pocket or whatever that help to basically help block and counteract the effects of those electromagnetic pollution. Barring that, I have found that a lot of the adaptogenic herbs like the mineral chi tonic or Nature Sunshine's Trigger Immune formula have a great deal of benefit in strengthening the body's bioelectric field in order to help resist EMFs. So if you're working around EMFs, I would highly suggest trying some either the mineral chi tonic or the Trigger Immune. You could even muscle test to see which one is better in order to minimize and keep your own electrical circuits working strongly to oppose that. Someone says, I studied advanced nutrition college after natural health training. They were behind the research. Plus, they warned against natural supplements while advising to eat foods supplemented with man-made vitamins. Yes, I know. They're way behind the thing, and I think some of it's deliberate. If people have trouble with oxalates and so they have an issue with eating beets, I would be careful with Rejuvenate. I did a little research sometime back on the oxalate issue. There are some positive benefits to oxalates. Some people are very sensitive to them. If you're sensitive to them, you're just going to have to avoid it, and that product won't be for you. There are definitely, we're all somewhat genetically different, which is why you can't blanket say this will work for everyone. There is no such thing as the one shoe fits all sizes in nutrition or anything else. You have to learn to pay attention to your body. You can use intuitive techniques like muscle testing and so forth to help you, or use a compass, scanning things to kind of individualize programs. So the main thing is just to help that. Let's see. Okay, I get it. So stove up, driving a truck, hit a pole hard and made him stiff all over. When he turns a certain way, he gets a catch in his back, which is very painful. Okay, so his muscles basically, okay. That is the result of a freeze reaction in the muscles due to stress. Your things like lobelia and kava help on a physical level to do that. I would say that you might want to give him some distress remedy to help basically break out of the stress response that he got from that, and see if that helps him to process the emotions. The way you come out of that freeze reaction is allowing your body to tremble, and so that it's an involuntary shaking. And if that happens, taking like the stress remedy or something, he needs to let it happen, because that's how the tension is released from the muscles from the trauma. That's that's pretty much the what you have to do. A cheese tumor. You mean like a fatty tumor? Because I've never heard the word cheese tumor before. Someone says, I've been imprinting rife energy signatures into quartz crystals to balance the body. Very interesting. Yeah, I really do believe that this whole frequency energy thing is part of the medicine of the future. I think we will eventually get to the point where we either through devices or even through direct healing, direct, spiritual connection, you put the right energy back into the circuits and the body will heal. If the blueprint is present in every cell to create the entire body, then the blueprint is present in every cell to repair everything in the body. So there has to be something happening that's interfering with the flow of life energy that causes the body to stop being able to repair itself. And either that's a lack of nutrients or a blocking of toxins or a blockage in the flow of energy through the body. That's the life force. So that's my whole ABC idea of healing: activate, build, and cleanse. Get the energy flowing through the body, put in the nutrients, get rid of the toxins, and the body heals itself. That's been my philosophy for 25 years, and after working with that, it's still my philosophy. I keep learning more about it, but I still think the basic idea is right, that you have to do those three things to get the body to heal. You have to unblock the flow of energy, which often involves mental and emotional attitudes, or doing something to get the energy flowing through the body properly. Again, deep breathing, whatever. Then you have to get the right nutrients into the body, and you have to get the toxins out. And those are the three things that are the basic things you need to do to heal anything. Now, what I said earlier about blood pressure and so forth applies also to antidepressants. If people are on antidepressants, you never want to have them discontinue antidepressants abruptly. It is extremely dangerous to discontinue SSRIs abruptly. People can flip out. They can go crazy from sudden discontinuation of SSRIs. I heard a talk by David Christopher at the IPA conference this spring, and he said that he had uncovered something interesting. We have a mutual friend. I haven't talked to her in years, but her name's Ann Blake Tracy, who's done extensive research on the whole issue of SSRIs, showing that SSRIs are linked to increases in violent behavior, suicidal behavior, and all kinds of other major problems. But apparently what she's uncovered is that because SSRIs tend to blunt your conscience and make you so that you don't feel as guilty about doing things that are harmful to other people, that the military has been slipping SSRIs into our military troops when they're in combat zones without telling them that they're giving them SSRIs. This is what she says. And so when they come out of the military and they're suddenly dropped off the SSRI and they didn't even know they were taking it, the rebound effect is that it increases suicide and violent behavior. And she says this is one of the reasons why we're having so many problems with returning GIs. Now, I don't know, haven't had a chance to research and verify that, but I do know that what she's saying is true. You discontinue that abruptly and you've got problems. Now, if you take something like Mood Elevator, or you take things to help naturally deal with the depression, and you start working with the person to deal with their emotions, then again, as they start to feel better, you gradually reduce the dose of the antidepressants very slowly over a period of many months. Inversion tables, you're talking about the things where you go upside down. I have one. And the thing is when I use it, I feel great, but I get so busy with everything going on in my family, I don't use it enough. So it really takes a lot of stress off my neck and shoulders, and I love it. It's fantastic. Someone said Tesla used quartz crystals in his work. Would quartz crystal protect us? It might. I think quartz crystals, I think there is something to crystals. I had a friend who was really big into this, and she actually made pieces of jewelry with certain crystals that help protect people from electromagnetic radiation. So I do think that different gemstones can actually have a positive effect in that way. I don't know enough as much about that as other people, but I definitely think that's possible. Someone asks about asthma. We're getting to the end, so I'm going to quickly take care of whatever questions, comments I have, and then we'll wrap it up. With asthmatics, number one, I have a YouTube video on pulling down a hiatal hernia. I've never seen an asthmatic that doesn't have a hiatal hernia, so I'd work on that. I've never seen an asthmatic that doesn't have issues with their adrenal glands and need to have some support for their adrenals. Lobelia is a bronchial dilator, and you can use that to help dilate the bronchioles. So they use two things to basically help symptomatically with it. One is they use a corticosteroid inhaler, which basically reduces inflammation in the bronchioles. And then they use an emergency inhaler, which is an epinephrine inhaler that dilates the bronchioles. Lobelia will dilate the bronchioles, and licorice root I've found is good for a lot of asthmatics because it has a natural cortisol-like effect and helps support the adrenals. If a person can't tolerate licorice because they've got problems with blood pressure, they could try wild yam, yucca, or maybe turmeric, or some other anti-inflammatory formula to take to reduce the inflammation in the bronchioles. Of course, GI tract health is extremely important to healing all respiratory conditions, as the lungs and the colon are related energetically. And so cleaning out and healing your colon is the long-term solution. A lot of asthmatics also have food allergies. I don't know if salt lamp helps EMFs. I know that salt lamps are pretty cool. There's one in our little clinic room. Stress relief might be helpful for the stove up, but I don't think, like I said, I think a little bit of lobelia or kava would probably work better, and possibly magnesium. I forgot to mention magnesium. Okay, anything besides a hiatal hernia that could prevent belly breathing? I've been a deep belly breather for 18 years, had episodes that I could only breathe into lungs when standing up and so forth. That can actually be emotionally triggered. I know that I worked really hard on trying to train myself to breathe through the belly, and I got better at it. But then I had a series of Rolfing sessions. And in one of the Rolfing sessions, he went in and worked on something related to the diaphragm. And I felt like I was choking. And the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck 3 times when I was born. And I nearly suffocated. And I actually physically relived that and unwound the trauma from that. And after that, I was able to really easily breathe from my diaphragm. So there can be emotional issues. I just don't know what. Okay, a lipoma. Okay. I would recommend the herb that I've consistently recommended, and it seems to be very helpful for lipomas, is chickweed. Very high doses of chickweed, and possibly chickweed and the SF formula. Anyway, there might be other things. Again, you'd have to know more about the specific person for that, but generally speaking. Okay. Someone had to have skin grafting on their hand, something jumpstart the healing. A couple of good, just basic ideas that you could use. One is put some drops of distress remedy, like about 10 drops, into a little spray bottle of water, mist the area of the hand to help stimulate healing. I think that's a good way to do that. I teach, some energy healing techniques that are really useful for that. If you have access to the skin, You can use poultices. I don't know if the hand can be soaked. I mean, I've got a lot of questions about this, but there are quite a few things you can do to jumpstart healing. Taking just tissue healing herbs internally can be helpful as well. Okay, well, I think that's all of the questions I have time for tonight. Restless leg. Oh, I don't want to answer one more. Restless legs and neuropathy. Again, when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm talking very generally because I always work specifically with people looking at everything that's going on with them to try to figure out the whole big picture. But when you're talking just in something like this, I can only give very general solutions. A few things that could be helpful for neuropathy. One of them is alpha lipoic acid. That actually has been very helpful in a lot of cases. With restless legs, look at your minerals: magnesium, potassium, calcium. May be helpful. More magnesium and potassium than calcium. And another thing anyway, I'm not sure what to recommend on that for neuropathy. I'd have to have more information about the situation. Oh, tissue healing herbs include comfrey, marshmallow, slippery elm. If you're in nature sunshine, think of like PLS2 or bone C or stuff like that. Someone mentioned silver sprayed on. That's another thing. You can use some essential oils, make a little bit of some healing essential oils like lavender into a little spray bottle. You can also mist that on it to help it heal faster. So those are all things that would be a good thing to do. Well, I'm over my time, and I like to try to keep this right to an hour. Thank you, all of us, for joining me today. For all the comments, questions. I enjoy answering questions. We'll be back. Oh, actually, I'm going to have to I don't know how to cancel the one of the sessions, so I'm not sure what to do. But 2 weeks when I'm supposed to be doing this, I will actually be flying home from Canada. So I'm going to find some way to get on and let people know that I won't be here. So I'm going to have to miss one of these. And unfortunately, this particular program does not allow me to change the schedule once it's set. So in 2 weeks will not be. I will not have another one of these for a month. But hopefully we'll continue this through all of next year. I enjoy doing this, and I just want to mention before I go, if you want to get more information or you want to help support me in what I'm doing, please consider joining my member program. It's only $20 a month, $19.95 a month. You can save if you sign up for 6 months or a year. I do 2 webinars every month for my members. I've been putting the Sunshine Sharing now online for members to read, so you can read my monthly newsletter, the Sunshine Sharing. And we do 2 good webinars, one on holistic topics related to personal development and business development, that sort of thing, and the other one on a monthly health topic. And there's a whole archive of webinars in the member area, as well as a database that we're going to be updating very soon with fabulous information. So if you want to help support me in what I'm doing, please consider joining the member program or taking one of my classes and so forth. Thanks again for participating today, and goodbye.